Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Muse. Some of you may remember me from my last speech. Tonight we're here to discuss something which is relevant to us all, something that accelerates and simultaneously deteriorates society and humanity. That is conformity and obedience to authority. Obedience is a form of compliance in which people follow direct orders from someone in a position of authority. It's good. It's necessary. Without it, units such as the military and hospitals wouldn't be able to function properly. But how far will we go for this necessary good? You may be familiar with the Vietnam War incident of My Lai Village, in which American soldiers shot and killed more than 350 unarmed men, women, and children. One witness at the trial said, "He told me to start shooting, so I started shooting. I poured about 4 clips into the group. They were begging and saying, 'No, no,' and the mothers were hugging their children. And, well, we kept right on firing." It's important to note that though this was the only publicized incident, it may have not been isolated. Earlier, in the year 1961, a Yale University psychologist named Stanley Milgram conducted a series of social psychology experiments to study the power of obedience and authority. They're called the Milgram experiments. In Milgram's video recording case, he obtained 40 male subjects from the surrounding New Haven area, ages ranging from their 20s to their 50s, varying in occupational and educational backgrounds. They were responding to an ad for paid participation in an experiment to study the effects of punishment in learning. 2 subjects would appear and they would draw at random to decide who would be the teacher and the learner. Then, as the teacher watched, the experimenter strapped the learner to a chair connected to a shock generator to where he could escape. And in a separate room, connected with a microphone, the teacher was to read a list of word pairs so that the learner could memorize them. The second time the teacher would read only the first half of the word pairs, and the learner had to answer with the appropriate match using the given multiple choice options. If the learner responded incorrectly, the teacher would then punish the learner with a 15-volt shock, and every time the learner was wrong, the voltage of treatment increased another 15 volts. The shock generator ranged in voltage from 15 volts to 450 volts, and was also clearly labeled from left to right. Intense shock for 255 volts, danger severe shock for 375 volts, and the max shock 450 volts was labeled XXX. Also, the teacher got a sample shock of about 45 volts. And all this was to give the teacher an idea of the painful punishment he would be delivering to the learner. If during the test the learner refused to answer, whether it be out of rebellion or the inability to respond, the teacher was to treat it as an incorrect answer and to enforce the appropriate punishment. Allegedly, this was all to study whether punishment improved a person's memory. What the teacher didn't know was that he was the only subject. The drawing was rigged from the beginning, and the learner was actually an actor, an assistant to Milgram. He was not really being shocked at all. Before the experiment, Milgram described this setup to 40 psychiatrists at a medical school and asked them to hypothesize the results. They predicted that 0.1% of subjects would comply fully to 450 volts. Contrarily, the results were astounding. 65% of the subjects inflicted the maximum punishment of 450 volts. Out of those who refused, only 1 participant quit the experiment before reaching 300. As the test went on, the actor could be heard complaining more and more, asking, begging to quit. He eventually stopped responding, maybe dead. The teacher might look to the experimenter and express discomfort, asked to leave. The experimenter needed only to prod him. "Please continue. It is essential to the experiment that you continue, and, my favorite, though the shocks are painful, there is no lasting damage. Many variations of the experiment were performed. In one scenario, the teacher and the learner were in the same room, within 1.5 feet of each other, and when the learner reached the point at which he refused to respond or answer the questions, the teacher had to physically make contact with the learner in order to place the learner's hand on a shock plate to enforce punishment. I'm going to quote Milgram now. Time and again in the experiment, people just valued what they were doing, but could not muster their inner resources to translate their value into action. In all variations of the experiment, the result remained at about 2/3 total compliance, proving that for the most part, obedience to authority overrides one's moral code. The diffusion of responsibility that occurs places blame of the punishment onto the experimenter instead of the teacher, which allows for the teacher to rationalize that they are not responsible and therefore inflict limitless amounts of brutality towards the learner for punishment. Likewise, Ein Adolf of the Nazi Party was interviewed in his actions during the Holocaust. He explained that he was just following orders. Pictures taken of the workers in the concentration camps were not of dead and monstrous people. Workers were depicted happily socializing in rocking chairs, having some blueberries during a break, singing together. Those who obeyed malevolent authority were normal people like you and me. And for the compulsion to appease authority, they were the machine to enable the factory-efficient genocide of the Holocaust. So what's to hold us? If Milgram's conclusion is correct, and as he said, they obey as long as the command comes from a legitimate authority, then he may also be correct in saying that people can't be counted on to disobey malevolent authority. It is my opinion that if we, as humans, remain unaware of this powerful compulsion, he might be right, and we may be doomed to repeat history. Thanks.